Good morning, everybody. Keith Engle here for TGI Sports Talks one-on-one with Keith Engle. I'll be joined in a minute by my guest today, Randy Lerch. Randy is former Major League Baseball pitcher with the Phillies, the Brewers, the Expos, the Giants. If I'm looking at my screen, I should look right there. We got them all. Randy's got a great story to tell, both on the baseball field and some of his experiences there, and certainly some things that happened to Randy during his career that may have led to it not being the career that he wanted. We'll talk to him about that. But he's shared all of his experiences in a book called God in the Bullpen, which I talked about the other day. It's the Randy Lerch story, a big leaguer's battle with drug and alcohol addiction and cirrhosis. It was co-written with Harold A. Lerch, not any relation to Randy, which we'll talk about here in a second. I want to welcome everybody this morning watching on our TGI Sports Talk platforms, Facebook, YouTube, X, known as Twitter, to like you guys who can't get with the new programs. I hate that when they change things up like that, but whatever. We're live on Roku this morning on the National Streaming Sports Network. Make sure you download that Roku channel. You may still see it as, let me kill the rest of this music. You may still see that as Northeast Streaming Sports, but it'll be changing soon. Also on Let's Talk Sports, their YouTube platform. And we'll also replay this. It'll be on Roku replayed midnight tonight. And also all the baseball and podcast groups that allow me to share this. I thank you for that. Quick thank you to last week's guest, Harvey Williams, former running back, standout with the LSU Tigers and later with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Raiders. We had great reception to that, as we have to all the interviews. And next week's guest will be Paul Rosen, who is a para-hockey player is his main claim to fame. He won a gold medal at the Paralympics here in 2006 and played in many other sports, and it's a very inspiring story as well, as a lot of our guests are. And you'll hear that from Randy this morning. So once again, Randy Lerch, our guest this morning, we welcome him with open arms. Good morning, Randy.
Good morning, Keith. How are you doing? And thank you for having me.
It is great to chat with you. I do remember your career. I know somewhere I read something. I don't know if it was in Ball 9 or something. I read, that you're not a well-known name in baseball circles. I think people of my age do remember Randy Lerch, because if you were following baseball at that time, I'm a Yankee fan, but the Yankees weren't making the playoffs back when you were coming up. So I remember those great Philly teams, and also remember a game that we'll get into later that you pitched against the Yankees for the Brewers. So I thank you for coming on so early out there in California, and I know you had a little rough week, so I'm glad you were able to get in front of the camera with us today and talk about your career and your life. And you've been very open about that. And I like to share that with the viewers.
Yeah, that would be great. That's my passion, my purpose now, since I've been, the cirrhosis came about. And, and then when you asked me to come on, I thought you said that you're a Yankee fan, and I believe the show's out of New York. And, I always loved going and playing there. I love playing, I played in Shea and the old Yankee Stadium, and have some stories in my book about that. My book I wrote my book about the addiction, but also about some fun stories, never told stories about, Yankee Stadium, how it was, and to share that with the people. So there'll be some of that in there. And I just look forward to talking to Yankee fans and all the fans.
Yeah, and we have fans all over the country and the world, actually. We got fans in the UK and Australia and all over Europe. We got some great baseball fans, fans in general, but baseball fans specifically. And before I get into the specifics, talking about the book itself, I think you did a great job of weaving in, baseball stories, because people want to read baseball stories, obviously, but telling your story and kind of the pitfalls that face a young man getting to that level and how it can spiral. out of control, and also how you can save yourself from that. So I look forward to diving into that, as much of that as we can today. And by the way, I read somewhere, and I don't know if it was in your book or somewhere when I looked up some information, that one of the reviews when your book came out, that it was the best baseball tell-all, if you will, since Ball 4 and Jim Bouton, which is a pretty good, I think, accolade for you.
I thought Barry Bloom, the very outstanding sports writer, and he actually is on the, he votes for the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. He's from, he was in my area. I grew up in my area, I believe, and was one of the writers at our local newspaper. And I asked him if he would read my book, and he goes, "Holy cow!" He said, "Amazing," and he put it on Forbes for me. Everybody knows the Forbes magazine. So there was an article on Forbes, and it really, the reviews were really good, and I was happy to have it.
Yeah, it's a great read. Anybody out there, get this book. It's a great. I read this book, and I used to be a voracious reader. I could read a book in a day when I had time. I don't have time now, but I got through this book in a couple of days easy, and it's a fun read, and an important read, I think, as well. So, diving in a little bit, Randy, tell us a little bit about growing up out near Sacramento, California. You went to Cordova High School, which produced some pretty decent names in not just baseball, but some other fields as well. Tell us about that. And I know your dad was a big sports fan, and how your love for baseball and sports in general happened, and how we ended up in the baseball path.
I'll start. My baseball path was, my dad was a big sports fan. Sorry about my list. I had a bad fall.
Yeah, you're good. Don't worry.
My dad was a big sports fan, and he taught me the fundamentals of baseball, and used to watch the game of the week with him. I believe Tony Kubek and Joe Garagiola and all that. And so I'd lay on the floor watching the game, and he'd be sitting behind me in an easy chair. And I asked Dad one day, I said, "Dad, are those guys any good?" And he kind of chuckled at me. He says, "Dad," or Randy, he says, "all those guys are good." And I said, "Well, I want to be one of those guys one day." And that was kind of sort of my dream of being a Major League Baseball player. And he took me to Little League and again, the fundamentals of the game. And it all shot up from there. Our area was amazing. It was a big sports town, actually, Sacramento, Rancho Cordova area. And as we grew up and then got into high school, Mesa Air Force Base, that was really happening at that time, was almost like a melting pot for a lot of kids and families that came to our area. And we had a lot of outstanding athletes. The Will Heights, who, Gerald Will Height, I believe, was with the Denver Broncos. But we had on our baseball team, we had 2 number 1 draft choices on the same team the same year. In high school, Jerry Manuel and Mike Ondina. And we had actually 5 players that had played in the major leagues off of our same team the same year, with the Nyman brothers, the Wolves. We're not all household names, but that's a lot of players to play in the major leagues. And we were a powerhouse and well known throughout the area.
Good stuff. Even outside of you, I mean, you had some guys like Chris Basio and Jeff Jenkins, who was a really nice player with the Brewers for some time. I know he came out of your high school. You mentioned Gerald Will Height, Seneca Wallace, who was a really good college player and had some good moments in the NFL. Lester Holt.
Lester. We had Jerry Manuel was. I used to walk home. My teammate on the baseball team used to walk home from practice every day with Jerry, and Jerry would, like I said, number 1 first round draft choice, but Jerry also was manager of the year with the Chicago White Sox, I believe, and also was manager for the New York Mets. So we've got a little bit of accomplishments with our team.
You know, I know it's Ken Rudolph. So you were talking about Kubek and Gradiola and Kurt Gowdy. Those were the days I grew up watching, and I loved those guys. And Ken Rudolph was a big announcer around the same time span, maybe a little bit afterwards, doing golf and basketball and such. He's another name that I recognize pretty readily. So as you're in high school, you were a really good athlete. So you weren't just a pitcher. You played positions and hit. You were a good hitting player. As you matured through high school and getting prepared to be drafted, I don't know if you were expected to be drafted. That's another question, I guess. Was pitching always going to be the route, or was a position playing also a possibility?
It's so funny. I absolutely love to hit, and the people, even the players in the major leagues, Dusty Maker made a joke out of it when he was, presenting me the Sacramento Sports Hall of Fame award. He didn't mention my pitching that much. He says, Randy can hit, and he likes to hit, and he'll tell you he can hit. And where I'm going with that is I just I love to hit more than I did pitch. I didn't get to pitch every day. You had to wait in between, and I'd love to go out there and hit the baseball, and that's what Dad and I did so much. Little league, hit the ball, and then once I got into professional ball and found out that pitchers don't get to hit every day, where I did in high school. I found out, I don't like this stuff a whole lot. I don't want to sit on the bench for 4 days and pitch every fifth. So I just want to get out there and hit. And so I practiced it a lot. And so I got to pinch hit. And, I ended up, you probably talk about it later, but ended up hitting the 2 home runs to clinch the division for the Phillies. And, so I did some good hitting, had some good, exciting hitting days to fulfill my ego, I guess.
Were there times where you kind of said, I wish I had gone a different direction and played a position and played every day and hit instead of pitching as you moved through the minors into the majors?
Oh, I did a lot. When I was drafted by the Phillies, barely 18 years old, Eddie Bachman, who was the head scout at the time for the Phillies, we were in our kitchen, and I didn't know what I was drafted as. And I was drafted in the 8th round, and Eddie Bachman, I said, so what am I? And Eddie Bachman says, he goes, I know you like to hit. I know you can hit. But right now the Phillies need pitching, especially left-handed pitching. So we're going to try you out there. If it doesn't work out, then we'll go ahead and make you a hitter. So pitching was my deal.
Were you expecting to get drafted the year you did? Was it pretty much a foregone conclusion in your mind, your family's mind, that you'd be drafted somewhere by somebody?
I was. I had an outstanding junior year. I was 13-0 with a .50 earned running average, and things were really happening. And my senior year, I had some arm problems, and I lost a game. So I was 10-1, 12-1. So I didn't go as high as I thought I would in the draft, but I was pretty sure I was going to get drafted.
Was getting drafted by the Phillies any kind of a negative experience? I know you grew up a Giants fan, obviously, from where you lived. I'm sure you would have loved to have gotten drafted by the Giants. You played later on, which we can touch on, but would you prefer to get drafted by the Giants or somewhere at least on the West Coast, or did you not mind going east?
Well, that's a great question, Keith, because it's hard to believe, with this day and age of the internet and the cable networks, which there wasn't anything like that then. So,
right.
For me, it was being on the West Coast. It was the Giants who, I grew up idolizing, Willie Mays, Willie McCovey, Juan Marichal. Those were the guys in those days. And then, of course, the great players with the Dodgers. I didn't even know they had other teams. It's funny, but when I was drafted by the Phillies, I was actually disappointed because I thought, well, the Giants are going to get me. And when I was drafted by the Phillies, it was like, okay, well, well, you got drafted anyway, and let's see what's going to happen from then. But I for sure was a little disappointed, but it worked out okay.
Did you ever get to pitch again? I mean, again, those guys were getting a little long in the tooth by the time you got drafted. McCovey might have been the only one still around. Did you get to pitch against McCovey or any of your other guys you kind of grew up watching?
I did. I pitched against Willie McCovey. Willie McCovey, Willie Mays. I always wanted to I would go out and as kids do, I would emulate your favorite player, the one you looked up to. And I always wanted to be Willie Mays, even though I was a left-hander, and Willie McCovey. And my parents said, hey, you're going to be Willie McCovey someday, Willie Mays. And I want to be Mays. But to answer your question, I had the opportunity to pitch against Willie McCovey. I mean, can you imagine? Here's a kid growing up, and here's Willie McCovey. You're watching him, and here he is hitting these mammoth home runs. On top of it, he's just a huge man.
Yeah.
And then here he is standing. You're a 20-year-old kid, 21-year-old kid, and he's standing in the batter's box to face you. And I actually, believe it or not, I struck him out 3 times in one game. And my parents in the stands, so they got to see that too. And then Willie got me back. That was in San Francisco, and then Willie got me back when we went to Philadelphia. He ended up hitting a long 3-run home run off of me, and then I did get to pitch against the Alous and Bobby Bonds and some of those guys. So I got to fill some of my childhood dreams.
It's funny. You mentioned being a Giant fan and me being a Yankee fan. And about the time you were getting drafted, well, I guess the year before, the guy I grew up idolizing, as you talked about some of these guys in the Giants, was Bobby Mercer. And he gets traded for Bonds that year before you got drafted. So you might have got to see my guy play a little bit with the Giants. I was heartbroken when he got traded. I'm 15 years old. But you remember Bobby with the Giants?
I remember Bobby with the Cubs, I believe.
With the Cubs after the Giants, he got traded.
I pitched against Bobby actually quite a bit. Being in the Eastern Division at the time,
sure,
he played the Cubs. So Mercer was a mainstay in that lineup for a while, and I didn't follow the American League that much when I was coming up, so I didn't know what a star Bobby Mercer was. I didn't follow the Yankees that much. I was more Mets and National League. I didn't even know if the American League existed really. I guess I was a pretty protected kid. I don't know, but I did.
You're present in your present at all times.
Exactly. So but those guys were the Cubs, and that came over and stuff like that. Mercer was one of them, and a great one.
Here's a question. As we move into you start your professional career, Chris F. Grave, he's our Toronto correspondent up there, but he's saying good morning, and he says I think you started your career with Auburn, or was one of your first stops, and you were managed by Harold Lloyd, and he'll be 92 years old. Would have been 92 years old. Give us some of your impressions about that time. And I know you were also managed as you move forward by Hall of Famer Jim Bouton in the major leagues or the minor leagues. What were the influences? And you progressed fairly quickly, in my recollection, through the minor leagues to get to the Phillies. What are your thoughts about that time?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for that question, Harold Lloyd. I can picture Harold. I'm so happy that he's still with us, 92 years old.
It looks like he might have passed. He says up in heaven. So
okay. A Southern guy. I think he was a college coach. When I was drafted by the Phillies, they had 3 Class A teams. They had a low A, which usually consisted of kids they drafted out of high school, which they don't as much anymore. And then they had medium, which consisted of the of college players, and then they had a higher A, which more was the guys that was on their second year in the minor leagues, and so they put me with the medium A. They thought that I'd be okay, but boy, I'll tell you what, it was a grow up fast kid, because I ended up having to play around, play with on my team with these college guys, and they were really, really rough on me, and especially when, I was the best pitcher on their team. I went 9-2 that year with a two some earned run average, and then they let me hit too, pinch hit and stuff. So it was a hard learning process, but I grew up fast. And I wasn't real healthy my second year, but then which was high A. I went to Double A, which I was 16-6, and after that, I went to the major leagues in a call-up, just barely 20 years old.
That cup of coffee there, was that important to get a taste of the major leagues at that point, even though you knew you'd be going back to the minors?
Keith, I was terrified. I was 16-6. Sorry about my my mouth.
No, you're good.
I was 16-6. Led the league in I believe in wins and maybe strikeouts, and I did real well. There was a DH that didn't let me hit. So, but our team won our league or whatever. So we went to the playoffs, and I pitched in the playoffs, and it ended up in those days. Can you imagine they let a young prospect, left-handed prospect, to go 14 innings? But I pitched 14 innings in the playoffs. I think I left tied 1-1 or something like that. Dallas Green, the manager of the Phillies, the world champion Phillies, was in the stands, and after the game, he came up to me and said, "Boy, kid, you had a great game, and how would you like to pitch in the major leagues?" And that's the first I ever heard of it. I just, you imagine, it was like it was like the kid that, scary monster walks around the corner and scares you. Huh? And well, of course, yeah. And so he said, "Well, we'll see what we can do." I think I said I was pitching in Reading, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And so Dallas said, "Well, the team's in town. We're going to bring you to Philadelphia and see if we can get you on the roster." So they did. And I remember one of the first people I met was Dick Allen. My dad was so excited. He flew up from Sacramento, and he was before the game. He was in the dugout. And here's Richie Allen, the great Dick Allen. And I remember to this day, I walked up and I said, "Mr. Allen," I said, "this is my father, Bob." And he said, Richie looks at him and goes, "Mr. Lerch, pleasure to meet you, Mr. Lerch." I'll never forget that day. Richie was over in the corner getting ready with his 100-pound piece bats he was getting ready to go hit with. And
that was a treat.
But those teams the Phillies had in those days, they were just chocked with veteran players, and they were pretty intimidating.
They were just coming into their own as far as learning how to win those youngsters, and some veterans like Dick Allen. Since you're talking about Dick Allen, should be in the Hall of Fame in my mind, by the way.
Right.
Very enigmatic player or polarizing player. Was his reputation deserved, or was he just misunderstood, do you think, from your end?
I think he was misunderstood. I wasn't around him, being a very, very young player. I wasn't around him a lot, but he used to hang out with Tony Taylor. And I remember the team started struggling a little bit. Tony Taylor and Dick would get together, and they say, well, I think they call it a cold duck or champagne party. It was their way of naming the party and then getting the guys together, to kind of loosen up or whatever. So they were the veterans on the team along with others, and Dick was kind of he was a leader but a silent one. So for me he was for a young kid, he was just, I was in awe of him.
Yeah. Before you get called up for good, you go to Oklahoma City in AAA and you play for Jim Bouton, as I mentioned. What was it like? And a lot of times Hall of Fame or great players, we'll say, not even just Hall of Famers, have a hard time managing and relating to guys who aren't as talented as them or have the same work ethic or whatever it might be. What was it like playing for Jim Bouton?
That's another great question, Keith. Jim Bouton was, he was bigger than life, just a great pitcher. 100-game winner in each league, Hall of Famer.
No hitters.
And it ended up being my manager. So I was pretty close to Jim down the road, but always used to be, well, you're going to, as I was in AAA and spring training AAA and get ready to go and break out, the older players would go, and they would kind of imitate Jim Bouton, and because Jim always used to call you young man, and he'd cross his arms, he'd get and get about 6 inches from your face. So they said, well, just get ready for that when you do bad, and he comes to get you off the mound or talk to you on the mound. The first thing he's going to do is cross his arms and look that stern look that Bouton can do, and said, young man. So I was ready for that. But you know what? As long as you were doing good and getting your work in and stuff like that, Jim Bouton was a great man. He's just a great baseball man. And I did well in Oklahoma City. I didn't win. So I won 13 games, but we weren't, our team wasn't real talented. But, I pitched for Jim. And then Jim was my manager. After the AA year, I went to and played in Puerto Rico. And Jim was my manager in Puerto Rico, too. So I spent a lot of time with Jim and grateful for it.
You feel like playing for him both in AAA and in the winter leagues. The winter leagues are a lot of times at those times chock full of guys from the majors as well playing in the wintertime, and great players, obviously, in the Latino countries. You feel that experience really helped you maybe get ready for your big league experience, which was coming very quickly?
It did. It made me see a little bit, even though not as much as I should have, that baseball was you need to take it serious. I was just a kid that all I wanted to do is just go have fun, and baseball was a business. And Jim took it that way. The way he expected you to carry yourself and stuff like that. So it was definitely perfect for me to have Jim before the next year. Here I am as I think the number 3 starter opening day for the Philadelphia Phillies.
Yeah, talk to us about that. And guys, my guest today is Randy Lerch, former Major League Baseball player with the Phillies, Brewers, Expos, and Giants, and we're going to get into some more stuff as we're hitting his Major League career. Dave Guyette, I see you got some questions that are a little bit, they're good questions. We'll get to Randy. We'll get to them at the end after we finish up here. So to stick around. And anybody, if you got a question that's kind of pertinent to what I'm doing we're talking about right now, I'll certainly get them in. If not, we'll go back and get a couple at the end. So you get to the major leagues with a very talented team, as we talked about. Danny Ozark's your manager. Had really helped grow those teams into the really good teams they became in the late 70s. Probably laid the groundwork for that 80 championship team, which we'll talk about in a second too. Tell us about your start in the major leagues, and so, your life started to change pretty quickly as you got to the major leagues on a professional and I guess a personal level. So tell us a little bit about how things started out for you.
It started out outstanding for me. One of the most exciting times in my life is we were getting ready for the birth of our daughter Christy. Just right about the time breaking, or a little bit before breaking spring training. I didn't know if I was going to make the team. They thought I might, but I started out real bad in spring training, giving up a lot of runs. And the greatest thing Larry Christensen could have told me, he goes, just go out there and he goes, you've already blown it. I don't know why you've already blown it. He goes, so you might as well go out there and just have a good time. And it's, maybe that was God talking to him, telling me that to settle down. But, I went out there and after he told me that, and I thought I had blown it, I went out and pitched 26 scoreless innings in a row in spring training and even hit a home run. And it brought me to the Phillies getting ready to trade some of their top prospects down the road and pitching prospects and making the team. And I did. I made it out of spring training and brought my wife and my newborn daughter with me. What an exciting time! And then, I believe I was the third pitcher out of I think it was Carlton first, Christensen, and then I think I started the third game. But we also, we had Jim Cott, Jim Lomborg. We had some unbelievable pitchers. And Tug McGraw. So there was a lot of them, and to be a part of that was an amazing time.
What was it like pitching? And I know Tug was a great influence in your life, but as far as in general, before we talk more about Tug, maybe pitching with one of the greatest left-handed pitchers in the history of baseball, and Steve Carlton. Was it intimidating? Was he helpful to your development? What was it like playing with Carlton?
Well, in a way, it might have hurt me because they kept pounding to me that you're the next Steve Carlton. You're going to be Steve Carlton. And
yeah,
I think as a kid, I look at it's amazing when my kids were 20 years old and they're in their 40s now, but I thought of them as just babies, just out of high school. I can't even imagine somebody 20 years old going out and pitching in front of 65,000 people on national TV, especially when Philadelphia had, I think, 6 or 7 daily papers that followed them. They needed an extra bus. And then, of course, with the famous Philly Boo Birds. And so it was very intimidating. And but I did go out, and my first major league start, I pitched 6 2. First major league win, I pitched 6 2/3 innings against the Cubs and beat them. And then I did very well. I think I ended up winning my first, 5 or 6 games, losing 2, and then the notoriety hit and I started doing some of the wrong things.
At what point, why did you first take that, the greenies, if you will, which was big then, the amphetamines, everybody, it was almost, I shouldn't say everybody, but it was prolific around the major leagues at the time. At what point why did you take your first greenie?
I have no idea. Except that it was done. It was well known, and one of the players on my team that I looked up to recommended I take these, and it'll help you to prolong your season, and you'll be better at it. And the thing is when I first took them, first time I ever tried it, I used to get so overly nervous before the games, and I just hated it. I hated that feeling. I hated the feeling to get up in the morning on game day and, have anxiety like crazy. And that would take that feeling away. And it didn't take, it took a while to look back on it and realize that that's what made me good. Mm-hmm. That my adrenaline would flow. It turned me into an outstanding competitor and pitcher. And by the time I started taking them all the time, it was too late, and it was the worst mistake I made. But because what it did is I would take the amphetamines, and then I didn't realize that I had the alcoholic tendencies because I never was a drinker either. But I found if I had a few beers after the game, I'd go party and drink a few more, and you could go to sleep, and that ended up being after winning. 5 or 7 games. I beat the Dodgers that year, and I beat a lot of teams that had a good start. And I I took those amphetamines, and boy, it was a downhill. It's not like I lost everything, but I just wasn't the good pitcher that I could have been.
Yeah. Was there any? I mean, you're not knowing beforehand that you have an addictive personality until it happens. But was there any history in your family of addictive personalities where it might have foreshadowed your life?
There was alcoholism in our family, grandparents and stuff like that. My dad liked his beers, but I never saw that he was drunk and stuff like that. But you wouldn't, as a kid, think, oh well, there's alcoholic tendencies. So I just did it. Just think about it. I was a goofy 20-year-old skinny left-hander that was having the time of his life. So, whatever works, right?
Right. You did mention in your book that it was before your second start that you took the first greenie, and that was the last game you pitched in the major leagues without them. And you interestingly talk about the basic cycle that would happen, that you take your greenie before the game, you get drunk after the game. After a good game, you went out and celebrated and got drunk. And if you had a bad game, you celebrate, you drowned your sorrows and got drunk. So the cycle would continue no matter what. What about between starts? I mean, was there still that type of behavior, or was it only the day you pitched?
I treated every day, Keith, like it was New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Except the day before I would start. And that was, that was no drinking, get ready for your start. And, in those days, the veteran pitchers, that's the way they did it. They go to the bar after the game, and, had a great time. And especially if you were a relief pitcher, I was a starter for many years, at the first part of my career. But the starters, you would see the old time players, they would pretty much party until the day before they would pitch, get ready for your start and go get them. And that's the way you did your whole career.
Do you think that there's any parallel reality where Randy Lerch doesn't take that first greenie, doesn't, fall into that cycle? And things go differently, or was it inevitable given the way the times were in baseball that this was going to happen?
Well, if I was a wizard, maybe I could figure out if that was the case. But
right.
I know one thing as I look back, I talk about it in the book that I was such a goody two shoes that at the end of my Auburn. The time in Auburn, all the guys got together and to say goodbye, and they had a party before the plane left the next day, and they all had me drinking Harvey Wallbangers, and well, I like the taste of that. I think that's the sickest I've ever been, especially hungover, and I don't think I even looked up the whole flight, the 5-hour flight home, and. If I look back at the way I was and the way I was goody two shoes in high school, and I was a pitcher of the year one year in the minor leagues. So I have no idea, but I'm sure wish it wouldn't happen, because if I had kept going like I was, I mean, every year in the minor leagues, I was, I went 9-2, 7-6, 16-6, 13. Yeah. So I was on my way, and then I won the first 5 or 6 games out of 7 or 8 in the major league. So I was, if you look back at my track record, I was headed the right direction.
Yeah. I mean, your ERA, I think that first year wasn't great. You won 10 games though, but your second and third years, looked like you were making really, really good progress on a very good team that was having trouble getting over the top, getting by the Dodgers and maybe the Reds 1 year in the playoffs, if I remember right. What was holding that team back to switch gears just a little bit back to baseball?
I think that we didn't believe in ourselves. I think we played gangbusters for the whole season, but we hadn't reached that next level. And then we put extra pressure on ourselves, along with the Phillies getting into the playoffs was just such a big deal. And then take it to the next level to get into the World Series was guys put so much pressure on themselves, along with, the press hitting them hard, saying, you know what, the Phillies are going to blow it again, And we ended up doing it until 1980.
I felt like you were as talented as those Dodger teams. That Reds team was loaded that you ended up losing to, but certainly the Dodgers team, I felt the Phillies were at least as talented as. What about Danny Ozark? What was it like playing for Danny Ozark during those years? Your maturation as a major league player.
Danny Ozark was the greatest manager I've ever had that I didn't know I had. Being a young kid, Danny was somebody that didn't get out there and harp on you and make things tough on you. He just, he was just a easy-go-lucky guy that I didn't realize until I got some of the managers that were, I should say hard asses and made life difficult. And
green in there?
I just wish that, that I realized just how great Danny was. Danny was, he let me develop as a major league player.
Chris actually catches my next question here. Who was the leader of that team in the locker room? Was it, I think you mentioned Larry Christensen, but Larry Bowa strikes me as a guy who might have been a leader on that team, but who did you see and look up to or the team look up to for leadership on that team?
I think Larry Bowa was the guy that, that he was the one that had the extra energy, made things go. With Luzinski and Schmidt, they were like the gentle giants that, Larry made things interesting, just by keeping everybody on their edge. There's a couple quick stories. Greg Luzinski struck out with the bases loaded, and in the ninth inning, and it cost us the game. And the Phillies press, the writers have been getting on him about his weight, and why would you do this to the Greg Luzinski, the bull, who could, rip your face off? But Bull walks by him and says, "Hey, Bull, if it had been a cheeseburger, you'd have hit it." And, here it is. We just lost this game. It was terrible. And here you see it looked like a bull literally in a china shop trying to catch Boa through our clubhouse. And, if he'd have caught him, he'd have killed him.
What?
Excuse me?
No, go ahead.
And then Carlton, he used to walk by Boa and grab him by the neck. And, lefty, the big old lefty, Carlton, these strong hands. I go, well, why are you doing that? Let go. He's like squirming around. And he lets go, and he looks at Boa and he said, "That's just in case you think about saying something about me," because Carlton would keep him on his, in his good graces with him. But just a couple of little stories there that, Boa's he stirred the drink, and then the gentle giants, they took care of business out on the field along with Larry.
I think the term was still relevant in that time frame, and it certainly was in the 50s and 60s. Would Boa be described as what I remember being referred to as a red ass in baseball, as on the field?
Well, he was. I mean, we had. It was well known in the baseball ranks, anyway, the players and stuff. But right off of our dugout, you walked into the dugout, past the bats was the urinal, and Boa struck out, was having a bad time one time, and you hear just this commotion like you can't believe, and Boa's in there just destroying the bathroom with his bat because he didn't get a hit. And I mean, he took care of the urinal, the toilet, and everything. I mean, he just many times Boa would snap and get in trouble with the umpires and stuff like that. once he got on the field, he was, he was a fire plug, or not fire plug, he was a fireball.
Yeah. You mentioned Danny Ozark and his impact and maybe not realizing it until some other guys he played for. One of those guys I got to believe is Dallas Green, polar opposites maybe of Danny Ozark, at least from where I sat. He did get that team over the top, but talk about your own relationship with Dallas and how he related to the team differently.
Dallas and I, I have respect for Dallas for where he took the team, but I think Danny is one that set that team up for the World Series championship. And Dallas and I didn't get along. On top of it, that was the year that I had my worst year ever. I was 4-14, and he made life miserable for me. And I was used to having Danny Ozark on that side when I said he would just give me the TLC, and I would look for the TLC from Dallas, and I would get nothing but the other end of it. So and on top of it, had a tough year, and that's my own fault. I should have. I'd been around long enough by then. I think I was around 4 or 5 years or something like that in the major league. So, but it was tough going for me with Dallas.
80 had to be a bitter year because you win the World Championship. But if I remember right, you weren't on the World Series roster. That had to be a very painful time for you.
And that was Dallas making his decision that he didn't want me to be on the team. Now, I didn't deserve. I'd been on the team a year or 2 years before. I'd hit the 2 home runs, and then the next year I'd had a really nice year in 1979. But they came down to the roster, and Dallas made a decision that he was going to keep me off of it. So that was a difficult time, and when I got taken off the roster, it was really, really hard, especially when we'd come so close. My first year, I believe second year. We'd made the playoffs a few years before, except for 1979, and then 1980. Here we are on the cusp of the World Series again, and here you are sitting at home, and very difficult to watch the team. You just love the success your teammates were having, but it was hard not to be a part of it.
And by this time, you're 4 or 5 years into your major league career, and do you have any sense yet that you're spiraling? This is a serious problem that you have going on with the drugs and alcohol at that point, or did anybody intervene at that point, or when did that point happen?
I absolutely knew, Keith, that I was overdoing it. I was staying out way too late, partying way too much, hungover, coming to the ballpark. Wrigley Field was really tough, all those day games, even if you weren't pitching. And I knew it, but I was so deep into my addiction and what I was doing, and it was every day. I guess it was that prideful thing that you thought, oh, I'll get better tomorrow type of thing. But for sure, I knew I had a problem.
Did anybody on the team ever come forward and ask you what's going on? Or is it just, as Chris kind of talks about, the cultural shift in the 70s and these older players are just plugging through? And I don't know about a pocket full of cash, by the way, in the mid 70s. I don't know that you were rolling in dough yet, but did anybody ever come forward at that point and say something?
They did. I forget, I remember Pete Rose said something, hey kid, you're drinking too much. And I knew I was, and I knew I needed to knock it off. But I look back at my life, Keith, and when you were a kid that came up and you're, like I said, barely 20 years old, had so much success, your prideful ways, the way you were acting, cocky, nobody's going to tell you what to do. Nobody's going to talk to you. So leave me alone type of thing.
Yeah. You mentioned Tug McGraw in the book, and what was Tug's influence on you?
I always looked up to Tug because Tug, first of all, was when I made the Phillies. He was the guy that kind of loosened me up, and I didn't realize. I tell the story in the book how I was walking in spring training. I was walking out to the field and walking through the exit door with my glove and my stuff, and Tug's standing there, and he said, "Hey, kid," and I said, "Yes." I don't know, something like goofy, but he goes, "I'm left-handed." And I said, "Yeah, I know you are." He goes, "And you're left-handed." I go, "Well, yeah." He goes, "That means we're both left-handed. And he starts hollering at me. "And if you think for 1 second you're going to even have one thought of taking my job, you got another thing coming. So don't even, so he's just chewing on me, and I'm thinking, holy cow." And it was almost like that was my first initiation with Tug McGraw. But we had a lot of fun together. He made things fun. He did goofy things that made the game fun for me. And he was a great pitcher too. We used to run. We'd go in the outfield before the game, and we'd run to get our running in to stay in shape and stuff like that. And then in the off season, our families would meet together, and we went on our Jerry Lewis bike-a-thon together. And then at the end of my when I was in so much trouble, and my book will talk about my dog attack, the dog attack that almost killed me. He helped me with the hospital and stuff like that. Not many ways, but just to point me in the right direction. And then at the bottom of my pit, when I was in trouble, just about to get either dead or whatever, no money, homeless, Tug sent me the money for a plane ticket after I retired from baseball to get me back east, and kind of put his arm around me, him and Larry Christensen, and helped me to get back on. But it was still a long trail to go after that.
Yeah, I'll go back to this question that Rick Sherlock put up. These was at the start of the people who are the greatest help in helping you get started beating your addiction, was basically?
It was the start. I had a long ways to go, but at least it helped me to kind of. I ended up coming home and didn't have a family after I retired. Went through that, and then back east in New Jersey, about drinking myself to death. But Tug and Larry Christensen helped point me to be able to get a job and things like that.
Back to baseball for a second. You get traded. Well, you get embroiled in a bit of a controversy in '81 where you end up testifying against the Phillies doctors, if I remember right. But it leads to you getting traded. What were your feelings getting traded from the only organization you knew to the Brewers, which was a talented team in the American League, hadn't gotten over the top yet? We'll talk a little about that. But what was it like getting traded and moving on?
Well, it was something you came from just out of high school. You were a Philly, in the minor leagues. Everything you did was the Phillies, and it's like moving from home or whatever, I guess. And then the major leagues, did some good things in Philadelphia, and then got traded to the Brewers. And that team was a great team too. I mean, the Brewers had just traded and gotten Sal Bando, whether it was trade, free agency, or whatever. Sal Bando, Ted Simmons, Raleigh Fingers, Pete Vukovich. And so Harry Dalton, the general manager, put a heck of a team together. Yeah. Had to be a part of that team and getting the rotation. And, I ended up winning I ended up starting the winning game of the first playoff win in Brewers history against the Yankees in Yankee Stadium. So that was a thrill. So I fit in for a few years, and they just a great talented team.
Did that pitching in that playoff game, given what happened in '80 and whatnot, was that it had to be a highlight? Is that what was the highlight of your major league career? Would you call that the highlight of your major league career, possibly?
It was one of them, Keith. But the game that we talk about the Philly Bluebirds and everything. In 1978, the Phillies we'd gone and gotten the playoffs and then lost in the playoffs, and fell short of the World Series every year. And here we went into Pittsburgh with I believe a 3-game lead or 2-game lead with 4 to play into the season. We were in first place, I think you said, but the Pirates were on a roll, and we ended up losing a doubleheader on Friday. And so now we've got a 1-game lead with 2 to play. I'm pitching on Saturday, and I mean, here it is, the pressure like you can't believe. Oh, the Phillies are going to blow it again. And what do? I go up and give a grand slam to Willie Stargell up in the first inning. And here we are down 4-0, 4-1 or something like that. And I remember when I came up to the plate, I settled down after that. I was shutting them down. I come up to the plate, and I said, man, I am this really. When I go to hit, I said, this really, really, really ticks me off. I said, if I'm gonna lose, I'm gonna get a piece of somebody. And first pitch, Don Robinson threw me. I hit it over the second level of the center field fence in Pittsburgh, and then it was 4-1. And next time I came up, Robinson pitching again. He threw the first pitch, throws a slider, and the second one I hit a line shot over Dave Parker's head and right, and settled down, and we ended up winning that game. So to win that game and clinch the division with the pressure on like that, it was probably my greatest thrill. But also pitching in Yankee Stadium, because the Yankee Stadium. I talk about this in a book. First of all, to pitch in Yankee Stadium, the great Yankee Stadium with Gehrig, DiMaggio, Mantle, all these and that played there, Ruth, and then to be able to pitch in that stadium. But you talk about intimidating, especially when you went out to warm up before the game. Here you are pitching. We had lost the first 2 games in the playoffs. We had to win that game that I was starting, or we were going home. And I ended up the dugout where you warmed up, the mound. It was in left field, right above the left field fence. And if you turned around and you looked towards center field, right there was all the busts, the Hall of Fame busts of these great Hall of Famers, the people I just mentioned. And here they were, almost like they were staring at me, right? And here's all these fans, and they're, you could hear all the commotion and stuff like that. And I'm warming up. I remember I was so nervous, so terrified, I couldn't even come close to home plate. I was so nervous. And I finally settled down, and I said, Randy, you need to settle down. Who cares if you go out there and you fail? But if you pitch one pitch on that mound, you will have already accomplished more than most all kids that ever wanted to play in the major leagues. You got to stand on that Yankee Stadium mound and pitch against people like Reggie Jackson and stuff like that. So as soon as I did that, I settled down, and I 3-hit him for 6 innings, and we went on to win that game. I didn't get the win. Raleigh Fingers. I'm still mad at him for blowing my save, but we ended up winning that game, and we lost in 5.
Yeah, almost beat the Yankees that year for sure. It was kind of the end of the Yankees mini dynasty there, that 81 season. They lost to the Dodgers later on. But you're only in Milwaukee for a couple of years, and you move on to the Expos. And I want to touch on that quickly, because playing in a different country is often a different experience. When I've talked to guys like yourself, for sure. What was it like going to Montreal and playing there? And I know Chris has got a question about a specific player there, but we'll get to that in a second.
Here it is, comes Keith again, that I didn't realize. I look back now at the unbelievable talented players that I played against and with. I mean, with the Brewers, I mean, with Raleigh and Sal Bando. How about Robin Yount was our shortstop?
I was going to mention that. Yeah, Cecil Cooper.
We had Ted Simmons, who's in the Hall of Fame. Cecil Cooper. I mean, it goes on, and then I go to Montreal, and I'm thinking, oh, it's just the Montreal Expos. We Phillies used to beat them all the time. Holy cow! I look back on it. The guy I was throwing to was Gary Carter, a Hall of Famer. And then, our left fielder was Tim Raines. Our center fielder was Andre Dawson, all Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
And, and the great Steve Rogers pitching and Woody Fryman, and, Al Oliver. I mean, it just goes on and on. Ellis Valentine. And I look back and I think, holy cow, Randy, the people, the players that you got to play with, well, I wish I would have appreciated it then, but that Montreal team was stacked.
Actually, a guy that Chris wants to know about is a guy who's a little less known. I know the name. Bryn Smith was an incredibly popular player in northern Quebec community at the time as a lumberjack-looking character. What are your memories of Bryn Smith?
Bryn Smith was one of the nicest guys you ever want to meet. Redheaded guy. Really, really nice. And I was always somebody that, I didn't realize I was never, I would consider a pitcher. I was somebody that, I would always want to see how hard I could throw it and didn't set hitters up and stuff. So I thought, well, you have to throw really hard to be successful. And Bryn didn't throw very hard, but he had a great changeup, great curveball. And like an idiot that I was in those days, he would say, well, what do you think? I don't throw very hard. I go, oh, Brandon, you got to throw hard on that to be successful in the major leagues, right? The last person he wanted to talk to. And it turns out that, his changeup and curveball was outstanding. And Bryn Smith, the great guy he was, also had an outstanding career.
So your career's winding down. You do get to go home and play, with your boyhood team and the Giants. You can allude to that a little bit. Did you have the feeling that the time was running out on your career?
I did. My it was like the excitement of my career was over. I wish I would have made the Giants when at the start, because when we first went into San Francisco, when I first made the Phillies, I remember my dad and his fire department took 2 Greyhound buses to the stadium, Candlestick Park, and were cheering for us when I was pitching for the Phillies. I ended up beating the Giants in front of all my parents and my dad's friends and getting the game-winning hit. And so that was the excitement. I wish it was if I was, pitching for the Giants. But then at the end of my career, I was struggling so much that I just didn't realize the excitement it should have been. I remember standing out opening day at Candlestick Park, and that stadium held 80,000 people, and it was packed.
Yeah.
And to stand and look at all those Giants fans, something I should have just appreciated. Like, you can't believe, coming up from Rancho Cordova outside of Sacramento, and then to be that kid that finally made it on the San Francisco Giants, but didn't appreciate it like I should have, because I was more worried about me not making a starting rotation or whatever, or being in the bullpen. Just a bad attitude.
And there's a few questions here. Danny, we'll get to your questions. Good morning to you, Danny. We'll get to your questions as soon as I finish up. I want to, as your career ends, I don't want to miss this. This is important. We talked about, your struggles with addiction throughout your career. We talked about some of the people that helped you in Tug and Larry Christensen. So what was the real, when did you get into rehab? What saved, again, I'm going to assume, Randy Lerch's life? What tell us about the circumstances and what you attribute to your recovery to, as such it is. We know you still have some problems, which you can talk about as well.
I was in New Jersey. I was in the worst of my addiction. I was up to believe it or not, a non-drinker maybe wouldn't understand, or maybe understand it more, but I was drinking a quart of vodka a day. And I would drink, I would drink and pass out, drink and pass out. And there's two friends, great baseball fans, Gretchen and David, who finally took me to the hospital twice. And I was in alcoholic detox and then rehab, which was just basically, it was the longest I've been sober in 40 years. Pretty much, and that was, you know, after my career, obviously, but then once I you know, I'd said I'd flown out, Tug and Larry, and flew back east, and so I flew back home again, and met my sweetheart Maria, who I've been married to for 17 years, and on top of it, it kept my drinking just not as heavy, but and got my construction career going. I was somebody that could, you know, I would drink after. At least I controlled enough that I would drink after work. And but the damage had been done. I ended up. After just sitting, not feeling good, my belly was swelling up, and back in California, and so I went to the doctor, and you know, my belly was huge. Didn't know what it was. Knew I didn't feel good. Knew I couldn't even drink 2 beers, let alone the beers that I used to, and went to the doctor, and they pulled an ultrasound on me and told me I had cirrhosis. They sent me to a specialist, and the specialist told me that you know, you're in bad shape, and that he put his arm around me and said that you could go into liver failure today. Basically, when I walked out the door, I was a walking dead man, and so he told me what to do, you know, the things not to eat, not to do this, not to do that, to set my liver off worse. And he'll see me in a month. And then make a long story short, 2 years down the road, God gave me more time. The doctor said, your liver's doing better and better. It looks like you've been given a second chance, meaning you're not going to die today, but you still have liver cirrhosis, and that's a death sentence. So at that time, I was so grateful. I wanted to, you know, climb the highest mountain and tell anyone who listened how bad drugs and alcohol were for you. And by God's grace, he led me to Hal Lerch, and he wanted to write a book. He was a Christian writer, and I wrote my book, God and there it is right there. It's been out. It's been out going on 5 years, and we've touched a lot of people with it. Hopefully, helped save some lives. We do it through our church and through other means. But I kind of summarized it a lot there, Keith. But
yeah, how long you been sober now, Randy?
Almost 8 years. The day that I was told I had cirrhosis, my special Maria called up in my chair. I knew that I was a dead man, and she said, "Don't leave me." And at that point, I realized how serious this was, and I told her I would do my best. And by God's great grace, I've been given more time, and now I've done a lot of podcasts. I even spoke at Folsom Prison. I've tried to spread the word and make anywhere that I can, and talk to my area and church about how great God's been to me, and how terrible addiction is, and how to help them with it.
Well, the book is a great testament, I think, to that, Randy. And there's a couple more questions here, but I just want to wrap up this part and we'll go on. If you got a couple minutes, we'll answer their questions. a little bit about baseball today and such. But this book, I think, is, as I said, it's a great book. If you like a baseball book, it's a great book. There's a lot of great stories about players we'll recognize. Some maybe we don't. But it's a great story, and I've kind of pushed it as I've talked about it on my shows the last couple of weeks. That it's a great story of potential, and the pitfalls that can become anybody in life, much less a professional athlete, and redemption in a way of overcoming that part of your life and giving back in a way. So I commend you for doing that, and I know your faith is a big part of that. Again, I commend you for what you've done here. It's a great book, and I wish you continued good health. So,
and you can get it on Amazon.
Yes, I was going to ask you that. You can get it on Amazon.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you sending me the book with a nice little inscription in there for it as well. So go to Amazon, guys. And I'll post that. I'll post a link to the Amazon page as well on my pages, Randy. So great stuff.
Thank you. Like you said, there's untold stories there, like the 23-22 game.
Great stuff.
Carlton and I shooting up the club. Just there's some funny stuff there, along with the. Well, that's what you do when you're drunk, right?
I did a lot of stupid stuff when I drank too much, but I never shot up anything. But yes, I agree. Depending on your upbringing, I know you grew up around rifles and hunting and whatnot, so makes sense. You're going to go do something like that. So, a couple quick questions, just to touch on. What your thoughts on the game of Major League Baseball today, and some of the rule changes, the pitch clock, the no spider tack. Shorter baselines, bigger bases, blah blah blah. What are your thoughts on the game today?
Some are good and some are bad. I guess you would ask most ex-major leaguers would say that. I think we're getting to where to where automatic replay or and stuff like that. And, I like the game when in its original form. Where the grime and the grit and guts and all that of baseball, it seems like they've taken away. I do like the timing of the pitch clock and stuff like that, because it used to drive me crazy. We would get guys like Wade Boggs and stuff like that. He used to step out each time and take their time. But there's been some good ones and bad. The instant replay has been tough to take. But beyond that, I think they've done a good job in making the game more exciting.
I think the instant replay, like everything, they just bastardized it, right? It's supposed to be for this. It was just for home runs in the beginning, and now it's like a guy takes his foot off the base for a millisecond, and we replay it forever, and he's out. And that's not what it was meant for. They bastardize everything. You think
you almost got to go to college to be able to figure out the rules, right?
You think the pitching, the massive pitching injuries? I have a theory that it's because pitchers don't throw enough. You guys, you threw all the time. You threw almost every day. And there was no pitch counts, and I think guys just don't pitch enough, and they don't pitch in stressful situations enough in the game. They get in trouble, and they've thrown 60 or 70 pitches, and they're looking for somebody to come and get them. And you tie that in with the pitch clock, and we just throw as hard as we can, as long as we can. I think that's kind of been led to this rash of pitching injuries. What are your thoughts?
I agree with you, guys. Everything's on. Here we go again with the radar gun and stuff like that. Throw as hard as you can, as long as you can. I mean, it's almost like think about one of these high performance race cars. You put the alcohol in them and they go a quarter of a mile or whatever it is, and then they're good for 3 or 4 times, and then the engine blows up.
Yeah.
I don't know if people are aware, probably now, but even my grandkids, all this travel ball and stuff like that, the kids are almost playing year round. Their bodies don't get a break. And then again, you're not out there extending your arm and stuff like that. It's just we concentrate only on how hard we can throw, and our young arms and stuff like that aren't able to take it. I heard some statistic that kids are actually getting Tommy John surgery in high school. We never heard of anything like that. Tommy John surgery. I played against Tommy John after he had his surgery. Matter of fact, that Yankee playoff game, I started against Tommy John. I think we're just trying to rev up our arms too much and do too much with them, and they're breaking.
I think that's a great analogy with the high performance cars. Kind of on the same vein about the rules, I got to believe you are not happy about the DH rule in any leagues, given your proficiency at hitting and wishing you could done more of it.
I agree with you. I took a lot of pride, and the Phillies did. I mean, we would out the pitchers before the game at home. We would take a lot of pride in our batting practice and stuff like that. I mean, one year Carlton, I think he hit 300. I hit 275. One of us led the league in RBIs and everything as pitchers.
Yeah.
And we ended up winning our own games. And a quick fun story: when I was traded to the Brewers, Harvey Keene was the hitting coach. Buck Rogers was the manager. And the Philadelphia press was really hitting on it. I got traded for Dick Davis, an outfielder.
Remember Dick Davis?
And they started saying, well, Randy Lerch had a higher lifetime batting average than Dick Davis. So
that's cool.
In spring training, just after getting traded, Buck Rogers comes up to me and says, I would like you to stay after spring training and hit for Harvey. And I go, I mean, Buck, I haven't grabbed a bat in months and months. He goes, well, he wants to see you swing the bat. And I was in great shape. I've been, getting my, strength and everything for spring training. So, okay. Keith, I went out there. I had the greatest batting display I ever had in my lifetime. I was hitting line shots and then hitting balls out of right, center, left. But I really messed myself up because after that, Harvey takes me up to Buck Rogers. He goes, well, man, that was pretty good. He goes, now I would like you to make every spring training game as a pinch hitter for the Milwaukee Brewers. Can you imagine that?
Oh.
And I had to travel. Usually starting pitchers, they only have to travel when you're pitching in spring training. You just go home and go to the beach or whatever it was. But I had to make all the games. And then Buck says, look, I want to use you as a pitch hitter during the season. And so I for the first half of the season, I hit with the extra men every single day with the Milwaukee Brewers, even on the road. So I got to hit a ball in second deck in Tiger Stadium and got to hit in Fenway and all those and to have that dream. But you can't imagine the guys hated me because I was taking the extra men swings and they didn't get many anyway on the road. So after halfway through the season, Buck hadn't used me anyway, so I quit. But what a great story.
You probably wish you had a video of that great batting practice session you had with Harvey to start that whole ball rolling, I would think.
Well, yeah.
I'm going to guess this is a facetious question from our resident Dodger fan, Danny Fuller. I'm thinking a Giant fan wasn't really dying to play for the Dodgers. What are your thoughts? He says did you always want to play for the Dodgers, correct? I'm thinking maybe not.
One of my greatest regrets was when in between my major league stay, when I got released by the Expos, I went and I pitched in the minor leagues back with the Phillies again. And one of the teams in Albuquerque I pitched against was the Dodgers. And I was pitching really good in the minor leagues. And one of the pitching coaches was Sandy Koufax. And Sandy knew who I was because of watching me with the Phillies. And I was talking to Sandy, and he was showing me how to hold it. He held his curveball, and I swear he was able to make the ball curve from 5 feet away from you, right?
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to after the Phillies didn't bring me to the major leagues, I said, well, I was going to not go to spring training, but try to get on with the major league spring training. The Dodgers invited me to go back to their Albuquerque team. And I just sure wish I had done that, because I'd have had Sandy Koufax teaching me, and who knows what would have happened. He might have helped me to get him, and Don Newcomb and all those greats could have helped me maybe get my stuff together.
Well, I owe Danny an apology, because I would have thought a Giant fan would say, I don't want to pitch for
them. Well, my dad grew up a Dodger fan. So
interesting. All right. Well, Danny, again.
There you go, Danny.
As Keith will always do when he's wrong, he will admit it. So
there you go.
We got a couple just a couple more questions here. Your favorite player to be when you were playing, I'm going to say, not watching. So who's your favorite player to be around? We probably already touched on him, I'm guessing, in this conversation, but who was your favorite guy?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I love the old veterans. I would watch them. I remember Tony Taylor. He was just one of the great. I remember I was there when he got his 2000s hit. He was somebody that would teach anybody how to act, and this is somebody doesn't know. He was from Cuba, and from the Castro regime, and just how brutal it was growing up in Cuba. And when he got to America, he was so grateful for America. And we'd stand there during the national anthem, and if one of the American players didn't put their hand on their heart or take their hat off, Tony was livid. And Tony Taylor always taught everybody how they should act on the baseball field, including how to celebrate how grateful you should be to be an American.
One of the last guys you remember not wearing a batting helmet, if I'm not mistaken. He wore the insert inside his cap, probably, right?
Can people even imagine? And back in the day, they would take just a plastic insert and put it inside your cap. And believe it or not, we used to warm up so the fans could watch us right in front of the dugout before we'd go out to the game, out to perform. And Steve Carlton was warming up, and Tony used to stand up there, and let Steve, like he's a hitter up there. And Steve screwed up and hit Tony in the head without his. The only guy you would hit in the head was Tony, and he didn't have his batting helmet on.
Him and Norm Cash are the last two guys I remember. And I'll tell you what, for me to get up there in front of Andy, I'd have to go up there dressed like a hockey goalie today if I'm getting up there against any of you, probably. So.
Can you imagine? Yeah, these guys throw really hard. Well, we threw pretty hard in those days. I threw 96, 97. So
that's hard. So
that's hard enough.
Yeah. And again, if you want to answer this, not everybody wants to do this. I do this question a lot myself. Who is the guy, your least favorite guy you played with? If you want to go there. If you don't, that's fine. But
yeah, I should not, because now as much as I live with God, I truly, my heart has changed. Probably back in the day I would have said it, but now
that's fine.
I'm grateful.
I'll ask. I've started to ask this question in a different way. Actually, is who did you play with? And you might feel it's yourself. I don't know. Who did you play with that you felt didn't get everything they should have out of their talent? That's the way I like to ask that question.
Well, there was a few guys that if they stubbed their toe, that not to name names, but guys that were so busy showboating stuff, which we didn't like that in the old days. We didn't like guys that would flip their bats and show you up and stuff like that. Those were the days where we didn't have any problem knocking somebody down or hitting them in the ribs. And there's a few players that, they would talk a lot, but they didn't walk the talk. So yeah. guys like that didn't, when they put their spikes on, didn't give it 100%.
Yeah. Who got the most out? Yeah, that's another question I like that. Who got the most out of their talent? I think a guy like Larry Bowa comes to mind, right? I mean, he wasn't as talented as Mike Schmidt, let's say, probably, but who would Larry be that guy, or somebody different comes to mind?
Larry was a great example, but people that don't, the greatest hitter of all time. Pete Rose didn't have a lot of talent, but Pete Rose, he practiced at it. He was good at it. I remember telling a story to Jim Lomborg. Every time I pitched against Pete, that great Cincinnati Red, what they call the Big Red Machine. Can you imagine with Rose and Bench and Foster and all those guys, Griffey, Perez, all those guys, and we pitch against I pitched against the Reds, and every time I make a good pitch, Pete seemed to hit it. And I asked Jim Lonborg one time. I said, Jim, I can't get Rose out. I said, what do you do with him? He goes, Randy, I tried that too. I tried to make great pitches, and all I did is serve it to right, serve it to left. And Jim says, throw your best fastball right down the middle. He said he'll hit the heck out of it right at somebody. And you know what? I did that, and he was lining to left, lining to center. But he ended up getting, when he was on a hitting streak, he got number 40 off of me, off of a changeup. So, but Pete wasn't great talent. He was Charlie Hustle.
Yeah, he's a great example of that question. Maybe the best example in history of that question, I guess. Mm-hmm. Rick, and I always save this one for Rick because he likes to ask, who was your craziest teammate? You've named a couple. Tug had to be crazy. Jay Johnstone you played with. He had to be a crazy guy to play with. Who's your?
I was just going to say that. Jay Johnstone.
There you go.
I mean, Jay, there was things that Jay did that people don't, that nobody knows. But I remember, when we went into here's a short Jay story. When we went into Montreal, Jay's on the Expos side of the field during hitting practice, and the French Canadian fans, they say, oh Jay, one ball, only one ball, give me a ball. And here's Jay, so he throws him a ball, and then he goes and he gets the whole batting practice bucket, and then he's throwing balls to him, and then he goes, he's got half the stadium in there, right? And he goes, you want a glove? Oh, one glove, Jay. And then he gets his hat, and then pretty soon turn around and here's Jay standing there in his shorts. That's it. He gave his glove, and it just went on and on with Jay. If Jay slid, he was a great player, a hitter and stuff. So if he got his baseball uniform dirty, he'd always, as soon as the Phillies got the third out and we're going to hit, he would fire into the dugout, and he would have a clean uniform waiting for him. He'd do one of these, quick uniform change because there's no way you could be out there playing in a dirty uniform. Just stuff like that. Yeah, JJ was goofy, but I love JJ. He
was crazy, but he was that guy could hit a little bit too. I was wondering why he never had a chance to play more, but
he could hit maybe because he made the manager mad all the time. I don't know, but he's another one. He swung a huge bat. I mean, he's real long and heavy bat, but he just Jay could hit.
I mentioned to you earlier that we have fans all over the globe. We have Michael Gott with us. I know Michael's over there in the UK. He's one of our big followers of our Major League Baseball update show and our interviews. He's asking if, in hindsight, and I'm guessing there's a lot of things you would change if you had the power to do so. But outside of the obvious, is there anything that you would change from your playing days?
Well, yeah, outside of the obvious, I think one thing that I wish if I was Houdini, I wish I would have. You hear about the announcers and stuff like that talking about this pitcher. Oh, he set this guy up. That I never took the game, and I never learned how to pitch. I just was a thrower, and so I wish I'd have learned that. And I wish I would have taken the game as a business. If I would have taken it as just I was just a kid fulfilling a dream, instead of realizing that, don't take this personal. I mean, if you get traded, it's this guy with $1 million that doesn't think you fit into his team. And so next time, go and do better, and he won't trade you.
Great answer. Realize Michael, thank you for tuning in across the pond. We always like to see our fans from out there. Chris didn't expect you to reference Woody Fryman, and he does correct us later. Woody played for quite a while with the Expos, but Was Woody a guy that he was a professional pitcher? I always look at him as he wasn't a superstar, but he was a guy who just went out there and gave you some innings. And I know he had arthritic elbow, if I remember right, and pitched in a lot of pain. What are your thoughts about Woody?
Well, Woody Fryman was my teammate for a year with the Expos, and somebody you would look up to. I tell a couple of stories, but Woody used to when he would head out because he was a short reliever, so he'd head out probably in a 6th, 7th inning, and Woody would shake like he had a pocket full of aspirin or something, and he did. He had a pocket full of Darvon because his elbow hurt him so bad that Woody would take a Darvon like a half hour before it was time to start warming up, and then go out and be able to go to the mound. And I remember when Woody was with the Cubs, him and I pitched against each other, and that's when I think it was 1977 or 78. But Woody actually, I believe Woody was my first major league home run. I was pitching against him, and I remember the count was 2-2, and he dropped down sidearm 2-2, and I'm thinking, here I am, a pitcher, you start dropping down sidearm to me. So I'm thinking, well, if he's dropping down sidearm, the next pitch's got to be a slider because Willie known for his, he's known for his sliders. So, Woody, but and so he threw me a slider. I hit it over the right center field fence in Philadelphia. And the next time up, I hit a double off him. So I got to play against him and hit him too.
That's pretty cool. Do you keep in touch with any of your former teammates today? Are you?
I don't. I get to see the guys. Dusty Baker. He was. We call each other homeboy. He was my teammate with the San Francisco Giants, and he also was my presenter with the Sacramento Sports Hall of Fame. But it's funny, Dusty. During the Hall of Fame ceremony, Dusty was one of the first inductees, and he was not managing. I think he had gotten let go by Nationals or whatever. And after a great successful managerial career and baseball career, Dusty's up there to present my award. But that's at the time they had the big scandal with the cheating and stuff like that in Houston. And so they fired the manager, fired everybody, and they were looking for a manager. And they had said, well, they were thinking about Dusty because he had a lot of experience, maybe settle that area down and stuff. And so I'm up there giving my acceptance award, and just by myself. Dusty had already handed it to me, and I said, I don't want to get too long in my talk here because I think Dusty's going to be. I said the Houston Astros are going to call any time to give Dusty the managerial job for the Astros. I was just being a smart aleck, but that night he was named manager of the Houston Astros, and every year when Dusty would come home, even after winning the World Series, he would always call me and see how I'm doing. So we keep in touch, and then some of the other guys in the area, but I really concentrate on helping. We help feed the homeless on Saturdays, and I pass out my books, hand out some baseball cards, try to tell people that there's hope. My personal thing now is to share my story and to but I always said, oh Lord, I kind of blew it in my baseball career. Please let me be as good as I could have been at sharing your word and helping others with addiction. So that's what I'm doing now.
Very commendable. Very commendable. Do you get to any games as a fan these days?
I did. Every year, the Giants and the A's. Now, the A's are moving now to Vegas, but every year they do an alumni thing to where they invite the players from the area to come and have some food and tickets and see to see each other and stuff like that. So I get to run. I saw Steve Rogers, and then kind of recognize all these guys at the new stadium at San Francisco Stadium. I forget the name of it, but I had one guy walks up and he goes, "Hey, Randy, Jerry White. You guys remember Jerry White with the Expos?"
I remember Jerry White, sure.
And I remember Jerry was his nickname with Dawson and Cromartie and those guys. They called him because they always had like to go have fun with him on the road. They called him Road Buddy. Okay, Road Buddy. But I got to see my Road Buddy and some of the guys when they go to the stadium and and pick up a game. And I was supposed to go to the A's actually tomorrow to say goodbye to that stadium. I pitched on that mound before when they had Billy Ball and Ricky Henderson and Kingman and all those guys. But, I had my bad fall on Monday, so I'm not able to go. But, yes, to answer your question, a long sentence, Keith, I have gotten a chance to go back.
That's good. And I do want to get you out of here because I know I've kept you a lot longer than I said I would. Danny wants to know the most influential manager. We probably touched on him. You could go back to your high school coach. It's possible. But who is the guy that you would jump off a cliff for?
Well, it was Danny Ozark, but somebody that got a bad name was Frank Robinson. Frank Robinson was my manager with the Giants. And if you did your job and did what Frank asked, so Frank was a baseball man, and you don't have any problems with Frank. We didn't have a lot of success, but we didn't have a good team either. So Frank Robinson and probably Danny Ozark were my two, and of course my high school baseball coach, Coach Anderson, who was, I believe, the winningest high school coach in high school baseball, first or second baseball history.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, but the teams he had was just like you said, Boswell and many guys that played in the major leagues. He actually coached.
Well, around here, as Chris says, we usually let him ask these questions for the wrap-up. It's usually a little stuff off you usually ask what music you're listening to, so I'll throw that one in there. We did talk a lot about what you're up to, promoting your book and spreading the word, if you will. What are your other hobbies, and is there any good barbecue out your way?
Well, Maria and I are real homebodies. We have just a few restaurants we go to, but we stay at home and don't go out and eat much. Plus, it's really expensive. But
sure is.
We spend our time with our church and trying to. Like I said, if I get the opportunity, I go and try to share my story with others. And I've given books away. I'm on Facebook. If anybody wants to get a hold of me on Facebook and friend me, I talk to people on Messenger. I've talked to over 3,000 people, a lot of them with addiction. I spend the time with them. I will send them a book if I feel like they'll read it. And I love it. If they're a Giants fan, I give a Giants baseball card out, or Phillies or whatever.
Well, that's cool.
Excuse me?
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah. But I if I feel like it'll give interest maybe to a kid or someone that you can help in some way. But the thing is, Keith, we stay so busy that if we run down to Home Depot to get something to work in the yard, Maria and I have 15 plants in our backyard. A lot of she got ghost peppers, habaneros, everything. And she's just a wonderful, wonderful Mexican cook. So, we work on our garden, our yard, and every now and then we get out to Cattleman's or something like that and have a steak. But man, we're pretty boring.
Good stuff. Randy, listen, I appreciate you. And I know I took you longer than I thought I would. This happens a lot of times. As I said, we get into a conversation and it goes here, there, and everywhere. And the fans were the viewers were very interested in some questions. So I appreciate your patience. guys, check out the book. I will put a link, get this in the right place, to the Amazon page for this. God in the Bullpen, the Randy Lerch story, a big leaguer's battle with drug and alcohol addiction and cirrhosis. Randy Lerch and Harold A. Lerch, no relation. Keep in mind. But Randy, I appreciate your time today, and I hope you'll stick around for a second to say a proper goodbye. And I do appreciate you coming on today and spending all this time with us.
Well, you're so welcome. I hope my story can, people enjoyed it and can maybe down the road use it. Great stuff. Great story. Guys, I appreciate all of you guys. I can't mention all by name right now because we're running so late, but I know you guys are with me every show, every interview. You'll be with me with the Sunday Stream of Consciousness. Next, I want to thank Randy. I want to thank, I guess ahead of time, I mentioned next week's guest on 101 with Keith Engle will be Paul Rosen, para hockey player who won a gold medal at the Paralympics and has got a lot of other good stories to tell. We're looking forward to that interview with Paul as well. Thank you, guys. We'll see you Sunday morning. Have a great Friday.